Aisha had always been quiet but strong. She spoke little, but her heart was full of feelings. Her father had passed away years ago, and the responsibility of the house and family fell squarely on her shoulders. Her mother was unwell, and her younger brother was still studying. After completing her education, Aisha joined a software company. She worked day and night, often staying late, taking extra assignments, never complaining, and always keeping her calm. Her life was orderly, focused, and disciplined, until Hamza entered her world. Hamza was charming, confident, and appeared responsible. He seemed to understand Aisha in ways few people did. He told her he would be her support, her partner in life, and soon won her trust. Aisha, exhausted from responsibility and loneliness, gradually let him into her life. But Hamza had noticed something else. Aisha wasn't just hardworking, she was financially independent and intelligent with her money. He knew the value of her savings and the assets she had inherited from her late father. And he was already calculating how he could take advantage. Their courtship was filled with romantic gestures, candlelit dinners, and expensive getaways. Hamza always had the perfect line ready, "You're amazing. I've never met anyone who balances life and work like you do." Aisha thought he admired her intelligence. She never suspected he was analyzing her wealth and her trust. After 8 months, Hamza proposed. Aisha hesitated. She remembered the warnings from her late father about men who moved too fast. Hamza, however, was persistent. "Life's too short to wait," he said. "I know what I want, and I want you." The proposal was extravagant. A private dinner on a riverboat with a live quartet playing their favorite songs. The ring was beautiful, probably worth more than his annual salary, yet Aisha focused only on the sincerity she thought she saw. Her attorney, Patricia, insisted on a prenup. "Any successful woman needs protection," Patricia explained. "It's not romantic, but it's practical." Aisha had awkwardly mentioned it to Hamza, fearing he would think she didn't trust him. He had laughed it off. "Of course, darling. Whatever makes you comfortable. I'm marrying you for you, not your money." She believed him. She truly did. For the first year, Hamza maintained his charm. He seemed supportive, attentive, and loving. But the first signs of greed appeared when Aisha received an unexpected inheritance from her late grandmother, a small fortune that would change her life forever. Hamza's eyes lit up in a way that made her uneasy, though she didn't understand why at the time. Within months, Hamza quit his job, claiming he wanted to explore new opportunities and spend time supporting her. Instead, he spent her money recklessly, buying expensive gifts for himself, investing in risky ventures without consulting her, and presenting himself as a wealthy entrepreneur. Aisha began to notice subtle lies, whispered conversations, and disappearing sums of money. One day, she overheard him talking on the phone, "Once we are married, all of it will be mine." She'll never know what hit her. That moment hit her like a thunderclap. But instead of reacting with anger or confrontation, she remained silent. She understood that some people only learn lessons through consequences. She made a silent vow: one day, Hamza would realize that trusting the wrong person could cost him everything. She wouldn't act rashly, she would wait, plan, and let the truth unfold. Aisha's heart was calm, her resolve firm. The battle had begun. Aisha couldn't shake the unease that had settled in her chest. The calm facade Hamza wore so effortlessly was beginning to crack, revealing glimpses of the man he truly was. She remembered the small lies he told over dinner, the casual exaggerations about business meetings, the stories that didn't quite add up. At first, she dismissed them, blaming her own paranoia, but the uneasiness persisted. It started with money. Hamza had insisted on handling their joint accounts to make things easier, but Aisha noticed subtle discrepancies. Some transfers never appeared in her statements. A few bills had been paid late, while others had disappeared entirely. Whenever she asked, he smiled and shrugged. "Relax, it's all under control," he'd say, his tone dripping with false reassurance. But the more she looked, the more she realized things weren't right. Then came the friends. People Aisha had trusted for years suddenly became too busy to meet, or they spoke of Hamza's side of stories that painted her as careless or selfish. She tried to explain, but Hamza was always ready with a polite, almost charming rebuttal. Her social world was shifting, subtly, almost imperceptibly, but she could feel it slipping away. Aisha's work became her refuge. The consulting firm she'd built from scratch demanded her full attention, and she threw herself into it, hoping that keeping busy would drown out the growing dread. But even there, Hamza had begun planting seeds of doubt. He would casually mention clients questioning her decisions, or hint at rumors that could tarnish her reputation. She hated to admit it, but a tiny part of her started doubting herself. One evening, while Hamza thought she was asleep, Aisha stumbled upon his hidden journal. Curiosity overpowered caution. In his neat, precise handwriting were plans she had never imagined, financial manipulation, subtle lies to isolate her, even conversations about how to push her into signing over parts of her business. Her heart pounded. Every instinct screamed at her to leave, to confront him, but she held back. Rage bubbled beneath the surface, sharp and intoxicating. Aisha realized she couldn't act impulsively. Hamza thrived on chaos, on fear and confusion. To fight him, she needed a plan, calculated, patient, and precise. Over the next few weeks, she began quietly documenting everything: emails, text messages, even minor inconsistencies in his stories. She researched legal options and reached out to a trusted attorney she had worked with years ago, someone who could guide her through the storm she was about to unleash. By the time Hamza casually mentioned yet another business opportunity he was pursuing with her money, Aisha smiled, hiding the thrill of anticipation. He had no idea that every step he took was being recorded, catalogued, and prepared to be used against him. The moment of reckoning was coming, and she would make sure it would be unforgettable. The first whispers of revenge were forming in her mind. Subtle, unstoppable, and inevitable. Aisha was no longer the unsuspecting partner, she was a storm biding its time. The next morning, Aisha woke with a calm determination she had never felt before. Hamza, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing behind her composed exterior, greeted her with his usual charm, his casual smile masking the greed he thought was invisible. She returned it with a smile of her own, carefully calculated, friendly, harmless, and disarming. Breakfast was quiet. Hamza chatted about trivial matters, his words laced with subtle condescension, assuming she wouldn't notice. But Aisha listened, every sentence meticulously catalogued in her mind. She knew the cracks in his armor weren't obvious yet, but they were there, and she intended to widen them. Later that day, she went to the office, her sanctuary and her armory. The firm hummed with activity, employees immersed in their work, oblivious to the silent war she was orchestrating. Aisha pulled out the files she had been secretly compiling, every misleading statement Hamza had made, every financial maneuver he'd attempted, every betrayal that had been carefully hidden beneath the guise of love and trust. She organized it all with precision, a testament to her years of discipline and strategic thinking. Her attorney, Mr. Karim, arrived later that afternoon. Tall, meticulous, and unwavering, he had always been a figure of quiet authority. Together, they reviewed the evidence, formulating a multi-layered plan that would ensure Hamza could not escape the consequences. Aisha felt a thrill of empowerment. For the first time since their marriage began, she felt completely in control. "We need to make him believe he's still winning," Mr. Karim advised. "Let him act as he always has, thinking you're unaware. That's when he'll slip up the most." Aisha nodded. She had already begun planting small seeds, testing Hamza's overconfidence. She let him suggest new investments, allow him to make boastful claims to her friends and colleagues, and even encouraged him to flaunt the wealth he had been misappropriating from her accounts. Each act was a step closer to his undoing, and she savored the quiet satisfaction of knowing every move he made was predictable, controllable. That evening, Hamza returned home, exhausted but confident. He spoke about a meeting with a potential business partner, oblivious that Aisha had intercepted the communication, ensuring that their partner was actually a carefully vetted attorney ready to observe and document. Every boastful word he spoke, every confident claim about manipulating her assets, would soon be recorded and used strategically. Over dinner, Hamza leaned back in his chair, praising himself for his cleverness. Aisha listened, nodding politely, letting him reveal his arrogance in full. Each detail, each hint of deceit, was another brick in the foundation of her eventual triumph. The calm veneer she maintained hid a mind working tirelessly, orchestrating a sequence of events that would ensure the ultimate justice, swift, decisive, and complete. As she cleared the table later that night, Aisha smiled quietly to herself. The pieces were falling into place. Hamza had no idea that the woman he had underestimated for so long was now the architect of his downfall. The storm was coming, and when it hit, it would leave no trace of mercy. The following week, Aisha put the first phase of her plan into motion. Every detail had been meticulously considered, and she moved with quiet precision. Hamza continued his routine, oblivious to the fact that every confident move he made was being monitored, documented, and turned against him. Aisha began by tightening the web around his finances. She had already ensured that her attorney had copies of all account statements, emails, and contracts where Hamza had attempted to manipulate her assets. With each mistake he made, she recorded it carefully. From fake investment meetings she orchestrated to deliberate oversights in budget reports that Hamza took the bait for, every step was calculated to make him reveal his true nature. She also reached out to key business contacts, sending discreet messages and documents hinting at irregularities in Hamza's dealings. While appearing casual and uninvolved, she planted seeds of doubt, allowing her carefully chosen allies to observe his overconfidence unraveling. The goal was not to confront him immediately, but to let his arrogance make him stumble publicly. Hamza, meanwhile, began to feel a subtle shift in the air, though he couldn't place it. People he trusted started asking questions, making offhand comments about financial discrepancies, and looking at him with cautious skepticism. Aisha watched from the sidelines, her expression calm, as the man who had once dismissed her intelligence now faced the consequences of underestimating her. That weekend, she arranged a family dinner, ostensibly to celebrate a minor business milestone Hamza had achieved. He arrived dressed in his best suit, smug and self-satisfied, eager to display his charm and impress their friends and relatives. Aisha greeted him warmly, her tone light and carefree, concealing the storm that brewed beneath her composure. Dinner began normally, with polite conversation and compliments that Hamza took as genuine admiration. But subtly, Aisha guided the discussion toward financial topics, making pointed remarks about accountability and transparency. She asked casual questions about recent investments he had boasted about, allowing him to answer confidently, thinking he was impressing everyone. Meanwhile, hidden messages were being recorded, every lie and exaggeration captured for later use. After dinner, Aisha suggested a toast, praising Hamza's initiative and foresight. He beamed, taking the glass and raising it high, not realizing that his own words during the toast would become part of the evidence she and her attorney would use to expose him. The irony was delicious. The man who had tried to control her entire life was now providing the ammunition for his own undoing. Later that night, Aisha reviewed the day's events, a small smile playing on her lips. The foundation of her plan was solid. Every move Hamza made, every boastful claim he had uttered, was meticulously documented. The walls were closing in on him, though he remained blind to it. Aisha had the patience to let him dig his own hole, knowing the final moment of revelation would be all the more satisfying for it. She went to bed that night with a sense of clarity and purpose she had never known. The battle was far from over, but for the first time, she felt entirely in control. Hamza, the man who had underestimated her for years, was now unwittingly constructing the path to his own downfall. And when the time came, Aisha would ensure he understood just how carefully his defeat had been orchestrated. The following morning, Aisha woke with renewed determination. Every step she had planned over the past weeks was aligned perfectly for today's execution. Her patience had paid off. Hamza was overconfident, careless, and already setting himself up for the consequences he could not foresee. Aisha's first move was subtle but devastating. She arranged a private meeting with Hamza's closest business partners, framing it as a casual discussion about future projects. She didn't need to confront him directly. Her objective was to plant doubt and provide evidence of his mismanagement without revealing her hand. Carefully chosen screenshots, emails, and financial statements were shown to select allies, accompanied by casual explanations of inconsistencies. Her calm, confident demeanor made everything seem credible, while Hamza remained completely unaware of the storm she had unleashed. Meanwhile, Hamza continued his day, boasting to colleagues about a supposed deal he had secured, unaware that Aisha had already intercepted related contracts and financial statements. She sent subtle reminders to key individuals, leading them to notice discrepancies in his claims. By mid-afternoon, whispers began circulating, and Hamza's previously unshakable confidence started showing cracks. Later, Aisha executed the second phase, the personal confrontation. She invited Hamza to a meeting at her home under the guise of discussing their shared plans. He arrived eager, carrying a stack of papers intended to impress her. Aisha greeted him warmly, masking the full intensity of her plan with a serene smile. She allowed him to speak first, letting him parade his arrogance and overconfidence. Every boast, every false claim, every misrepresented success was carefully recorded and observed. "You've been doing great, haven't you?" Aisha said casually, leaning back in her chair. "All these projects you've taken on, you're managing them so well." Her tone was light, almost complimentary. Hamza's eyes sparkled with pride, oblivious to the trap. As the conversation continued, Aisha guided it toward financial specifics. She asked pointed, seemingly innocent questions, which prompted Hamza to reveal details of deals he had mishandled, funds misallocated, and unapproved investments he had made. He didn't notice the significance at the time. To him, it was all part of proving his capability. Once the conversation ended, Aisha requested to see the documents he had brought. As she reviewed them, her calm exterior remained intact, but inside, she felt a thrill of satisfaction. The documents corroborated everything she had meticulously gathered. Every lie, every overstatement, every act of deceit Hamza had committed was now undeniable. She had set the stage perfectly. By evening, Aisha had forwarded key documents to her attorney and a few strategic allies, ensuring that her next move would be legally unassailable and devastating in its impact. Hamza, still basking in the illusion of control, had no inkling that his reputation, credibility, and future security were crumbling around him. Aisha finally allowed herself a moment of reflection. For years, Hamza had underestimated her, dismissed her intelligence, and assumed she would never act decisively. But every calculated step she had taken, every subtle maneuver, was now leading to the inevitable reveal. The reckoning was near, and Hamza's arrogance would make his downfall all the more dramatic and satisfying. That night, as she prepared her notes for the next day's confrontation, Aisha felt a sense of empowerment unlike anything she had experienced before. The careful patience, the strategic planning, and the controlled execution had positioned her perfectly. Hamza had dug his own grave, and she held the shovel. If you want, I can continue with part 6, where Aisha starts delivering the consequences and Hamza begins to realize he's losing control. The next morning, Aisha felt a quiet thrill as she prepared for the decisive phase of her plan. Everything had been set in motion. Hamza's arrogance, his carelessness, and his underestimation of her had built a perfect storm. Today, it would all come crashing down. She started by sending carefully worded emails to Hamza's clients and business partners, presenting facts without emotion, merely outlining inconsistencies and questionable decisions. The language was professional, factual, and impossible to dispute. She didn't attack him personally, she simply exposed the truth that his own actions had created. Within hours, replies started coming in, questions, concerns, and cautious requests for clarification. Hamza's world, meticulously crafted around his inflated self-image, began to tremble. By late morning, she arranged a meeting with Hamza under the guise of a routine business check-in. He arrived, confident as ever, holding a folder of documents meant to impress her. But the confidence in his eyes faltered slightly when he noticed the calm, collected look on her face. There was no hint of anger, only a subtle determination that he couldn't read. "Good morning, Hamza," Aisha said smoothly, gesturing for him to sit. "I've reviewed the latest reports and I think we need to clarify a few points." She let her words hang, light and casual, while he fidgeted with his papers. "What points?" he asked, trying to mask the creeping unease in his voice. "Well," she began, opening her laptop and projecting a few key emails and transaction records, "it seems there are some inconsistencies in the investment allocations and client reports. Can you walk me through these?" Hamza flipped through his own files, trying to reconcile the numbers on the screen. His usual charm failed him, he couldn't deflect or lie convincingly. Every word, every explanation he gave only confirmed the irregularities Aisha had anticipated. She listened carefully, nodding, allowing him to dig his own hole deeper, with every attempt at justification. After 20 minutes of carefully guided questioning, Aisha leaned back in her chair and smiled faintly. "Thank you for clarifying," she said. "I've documented everything. I think the clients and board will appreciate transparency, don't you agree?" Hamza's confident facade finally cracked. His voice rose slightly as panic set in. "Wait, what do you mean, documented? Have you been contacting them?" "Only to ensure they have accurate information," Aisha replied, calm as a still lake. "I want to protect everyone's interests, including yours. After all, if these discrepancies aren't addressed, they could reflect poorly on your leadership." Hamza's panic grew, his body language betraying him. He realized, finally, that the web of lies he had spun so effortlessly over the years was unraveling. Aisha's preparation, patience, and precision had left him defenseless. Every misstep he had made, every decision taken without foresight, was now his undoing. By the afternoon, reports and emails had reached the board, and murmurs of concern were spreading among the partners. Hamza was called for an urgent meeting, and Aisha watched from her office with a sense of satisfaction. She had not raised her voice, not shouted, not confronted him directly. Her revenge was methodical, silent, and devastating. That evening, she allowed herself a small smile. The foundation was collapsing, and Hamza's reputation, carefully built over years of manipulation and deceit, was crumbling under the weight of his own actions. She had orchestrated the perfect scenario, a downfall entirely of his own making. Aisha knew the final act was near. She had done her part with precision, now the consequences were inevitable. Hamza's arrogance had blinded him to the storm she had been quietly preparing, and soon, he would understand that every underestimation of her intelligence had been his fatal mistake. The boardroom was tense as Hamza entered, his usual swagger replaced by visible unease. The partners sat around the table, their expressions a mixture of concern and disbelief. The emails, the reports, and the inconsistencies that Aisha had carefully documented were now in their hands. Every glance at him was a silent accusation, every pause in conversation seemed to amplify his failure. Aisha arrived shortly after, poised and composed. She had dressed impeccably, exuding the calm confidence that had become her signature throughout this ordeal. She didn't need to speak loudly, her presence alone commanded attention. Hamza avoided her eyes, the arrogance he once wore like armor now useless against the quiet storm of her intellect and preparation. "Thank you all for meeting on such short notice," Aisha began, her voice smooth and professional. "I felt it was important to review recent financial discrepancies and client communications personally to ensure that all information is accurate and transparent." She clicked through a presentation summarizing Hamza's mismanagement, his unauthorized investments, and the emails that clearly contradicted his claims. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the projector. One by one, the partners exchanged glances, murmurs of concern growing louder. Hamza's face turned pale, as he realized there was no way to twist the truth. Every excuse, every lie, every attempt at manipulation had been anticipated and neutralized by Aisha's meticulous planning. A partner finally spoke up. "Hamza, can you explain why these discrepancies exist? These documents suggest serious oversight, or worse." Hamza opened his mouth, then closed it again, fumbling for words. The confidence he had relied upon for years evaporated under the weight of incontrovertible evidence. Every attempt to justify himself sounded hollow and desperate. He was trapped, a king without a throne, exposed in front of everyone who had once admired him. Aisha watched quietly, letting him unravel. Then she finally addressed the board directly. "I want to clarify that I acted with integrity at every step. The issues raised are not personal, they are factual. I believe it is in the company's best interest to take immediate corrective action to protect all stakeholders, including our clients." Hamza's hands shook slightly as he realized the full extent of his failure. He had spent years trying to manipulate and control, believing his charm and confidence were invincible. But Aisha had seen through it all, and her patience, intelligence, and strategy had rendered him powerless. By the end of the meeting, the board had voted unanimously to place Hamza on administrative leave pending a full investigation. His reputation was shattered, and the path back to respect and trust was irreparably broken. Clients began requesting independent audits, partners distanced themselves, and the whispers of his mismanagement spread throughout the industry. Outside the boardroom, Aisha allowed herself a quiet moment of satisfaction. She had not sought vengeance through rash actions or dramatic confrontations. Instead, she had used strategy, foresight, and patience to let Hamza's own decisions become his undoing. Weeks later, the consequences of his actions continued to unfold. Hamza was removed from his position entirely, forced to answer for the financial chaos he had caused, and his social standing evaporated as quickly as his confidence. Meanwhile, Aisha emerged stronger than ever, her professional reputation enhanced, and her personal satisfaction immeasurable. In the end, the story was simple but profound. Underestimating someone's intelligence and resilience can be fatal. Hamza had believed he could manipulate and control, but Aisha had proven that careful planning and calm resolve could turn deception into justice. Revenge, when executed with patience and precision, needed no theatrics, just the unyielding weight of truth. Aisha walked away from the ordeal with her dignity intact, her victory complete, and her lesson learned: respect is earned, greed is punished, and underestimating the quiet ones is a mistake you only make once.